The Department of Public Safety was established in 1987. At the time, the concept of a Department of Public Safety was relatively new. A young visionary, John Valentine, had an idea to streamline the effectiveness of law enforcement and improve the quality of life in the town of Smithtown. John Valentine is the fourth generation in a family that has a long history in the town of Smithtown.
My family was here for 3 generations prior to myself. I'm the 4th generation. We originally settled in Nesconset. My family had a concept and an idea of making a destination location. They purchased a large tract of land in Nesconset and opened it up as a go-to place for people from the city that may have wanted to fish or hunt and stay there. That being said, they immediately went into public service. My great uncle was the town highway superintendent for many, many years, and my grandfather was the tax receiver for over 24 years in the town of Smithtown. So our family has grassroots with public service in the town, and many other people in the family served in various capacities within the town government. So for me, at a young age, it was a natural thing to kind of look up to the town as a place that I might want to have a future with. Unlike most kids in 1974, when I was 16 years old, they were starting their summer vacations. I quickly learned that I wasn't going to have a summer vacation. I was going to the Parks Department to work as a laborer there. So at the age of 16, with my working papers in hand, I went to the town of Smithtown Parks Department. What I learned about the town of Smithtown at the age of 16 was the Parks Department had a huge, talented staff. Starting at the bottom, at that time, the county had a conservation program. It was called the CEDAR program, and they provided funds to the towns to enhance conservation issues, or what they deemed to be conservation issues within the town. So basically what you did was you got on a gang truck, what we call the gang truck, 8 or 10 young people, 16 to 18 years of age, and we went out and we physically cleaned streams and creek beds. Today, that's a big community thing. However, at that time, that was something that the town did. It was hard work, and it was dirty work. We would go out, we did all the work by hand. And it was a learning experience for me. The thing that was most significant to me, that there was a tremendous amount of discipline in that department. At a young age, I recognized it. And there was a chain of command in that department. And at the time, a man by the name of Charles, nicknamed Buster Toner, he was the head of that division, that department. He had a strict work day, a strict work order. He was a true leader. I learned a lot from him as far as leadership goes. Anybody can be a boss. There's a big difference between being the boss and being a leader. And I learned quickly on that hands-on approach and being able to demonstrate and to share with others that you can do the job, and teaching them how to do the job is an important factor of running a department. I would have to say that the Parks Department experience was probably the greatest experience as a young man growing up. I ended up spending some 4 summers at the Parks Department and worked with every kind of discipline there was there.
I started back in Parks in 1971. So I would say probably around 1972 or 73, John Valentine actually came to work at the Parks Department as a seasonal employee. And at the time I was in charge of the building maintenance division, so he was under my jurisdiction. And I had him doing all kinds of tasks, from painting chain link fences to repairing the park and beach buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew John Valentine well before he came to work there. Our families go way back. Mine in Kings Park, his in Smithtown.
Everybody took pride in their work. However, at the end of the week, there was really no money there. And I believe that the people that worked there at that time, including myself, we felt like we were doing a service to the town. We were proud of that. And we kept everything, the pride emanated from whatever work we performed at the Parks Department.
I thought he was a fine young man, number one. Number two, he was extremely serious about everything he did. No matter what we would give him to do, he took it very seriously. And I believe that's the case till today. John's very serious about what he does. He's a consummate professional. And he actually started that way when he was quite young and evolved into being the same way as an adult.
I stumbled upon what I now know to be the Marine Division. And it was a division of the Parks Department. And it was the last enclave of law enforcement authority that the town of Smithtown had. When we seceded our police authority to the county in the 60s, the only law enforcement group that we kept were the people on the boats. And that authority came from the Joint Watersway Agreement of 1959, which enjoined the village of Nessaquag, the village ahead of the harbor, in the town of Smithtown, in the policing and the protection of their waterfront and facilities. So under the Joint Watersway Act, which we now look at it under our LWRP laws and our joint coastal authorities, were done through that unit, that waterways unit under the Parks Department. They became the eyes and the ears for the planners. We became shellfish enforcement people, the safety people on the waters, because even back in 1970, 76, 80, the waterways were always a highly utilized gift that the town of Smithtown provided to their residents. I always had an attraction to law enforcement, so when I saw that division, I said, that's something I'd like to be. I'd like to be an officer on the water. It intrigued me. So I met with Mr. Toner and I asked him, is there some way that I could get into that division? And as much as I loved and respected the other divisions that I worked with within the Parks Department, I felt it was another discipline that I'd like to learn.
When John came aboard, it was about, 1977, 78, I don't know the exact year. The current harbor master said to me, "Will you take this young man out and train him?" I said, "Sure, no problem." So I took John out in the boat, we went in the harbor, we went out in the sound, and we, towed a boat, and we, did the job, and John was just so, wow, look at this, look at that, let's do this, let's get it done. He was always gung-ho to get everything done and always wanted to make everything perfect and right. And that's the way he still is as of today.
Here again, we were in a unique situation. Times were changing. Liabilities were as they are today, but even then, people were sensitive to liability issues for the town. And they found that, we have to give these officers more authority than they have. We need them to have, true policing powers and the ability to enforce the local, state, county laws on the waterways. So at that time, the town supervisor, Patrick Vecchio, he solicited the county. And the Sheriff's Department said, you know what, we'll deputize these officers there. They'll have to go through our academy, but we're going to deputize them. So at the young age of 18 years old, I went into an abbreviated Sheriff's Academy, and they swore us in as bonded deputy sheriffs. And we were the first town to do that. It was a small group of us. The pinning ceremony that you see in this photo demonstrates how young we were at that time. And you can also note in that picture that in addition to the town harbor master, Larry Sapliski, who was a mentor for me, Mr. Toner, also in that photo, you'll see that one of my co-workers at that time was also Councilman Thomas McCarthy at a very young age. The other individual is Paul Hedger, who worked his way up also from the Parks Department, and upon his retirement had reached the rank of harbor master for the town of Smithtown. So we all look back fondly on those times. It was the start of really what I would consider our professional careers. From 1976 to 1980 was a very busy year for the town, for our community, and especially on the waterways. At that time, the price of gasoline was very, very cheap, and we were very busy down there. And this Joint Watersway Act afforded all three of the communities or municipal entities to have a say on the waterways operation. So any given day, we could be working with a Nessaquag police officer or a head of the harbor police officer. So There is where I set my sights on my next adventure, and that was to become a police officer for the village of Nessaquag. At the time, I was very intrigued with the villages. I happened to be a history buff even at a very young age. So the villages afforded a tremendous amount of history in addition to the town. And the one thing that really intrigued me was the large family estates that existed in both the village of Nessaquag and Head of the Harbor. At that time, I went into service on one of those estates on a part-time basis, and I learned about how these large estates run, how they're managed, and worked my way up to be a caretaker at an estate at the same time as working on the boats for the town of Smithtown. And in 1980, lo and behold, there was an opportunity to go to the Suffolk County Police Academy, and I did, and I started working for the Village of Nessaquag Police Department. So from 1980 moving forward, I basically left the service of the town and started working with the Village of Nessaquag as a police officer. And in between 1980 and 87, I held various ranks in the State Parkway Police, which became the Park Police, the State University Police. But working for all those different entities, it permitted me and taught me a tremendous amount of insight and information on how different operations work. The State Park Police, a recreational law enforcement agency dealing with recreational type of atmosphere and people. They're there to have a good time, but sometimes things happen. Sometimes they need help. Sometimes they need emergency care. Sometimes people become drunk and disorderly, and there's the law enforcement side of it. Great discipline. Stony Brook University, another great opportunity for me. I learned about higher education, public safety, law enforcement experience. The university was expanding rapidly. Buildings were being built. I served on several committees looking at new construction. I was involved with the development of the stadium from a public safety, law enforcement perspective, and we were allowed to interact into those things. When I worked at Stony Brook, they gave me an opportunity to go to the University of Delaware, and I did. And I went to the University of Delaware, and basically the course, I spent a semester there. The semester that I spent there was about the development of a public safety agency. The Midwest, the Northeast, already had existing, back in 1985, 86, a true public safety model. New York State to this day, that model doesn't exist in a tremendous amount of jurisdictions, because in New York State we still tend to be a little bit reluctant to let go of one's authority or one's perceived authority. And when you create a public safety entity, you have to be all willing to work together. You have to take that law enforcement function and combine it with your fire service function. You have to take that fire service function and combine it with the town function or the ordinance function and the zoning. And you have to be willing to do that. But it gave me the insight and the ability to see, you know what, this works. Things like combined communications, that works. When fire directly talks to police, when police directly talk to EMS, you create a seamless public safety mindset to better serve the public. So when I was at Stony Brook, I said, you know, someday I'd really like to put this to use. I don't know how or when, but I thought, you know, we really need this. Like, this is really an important thing. So moving forward, hadn't been working for the town for some years now. I was reached out to by then Harbor Master Roger Balducci, and he was looking for somebody to work part-time under his command to supervise his bay constables. I said, you know what, Roger, I'd love to do that. Roger, it just so happened to be when I left the town, Roger took my place, and he worked his way up to Harbor Master. So we had a relationship. I says, I can do it. I'll do it part-time. I'm working for Nessaquag full-time, you know, at that point in my life. I would enjoy that. I'd love to come back to the water. And I did. In 1987, the county, Suffolk, Nassau, the city, pretty much all of New York State was in a very historic low. We had burst out of, you know, a major building boom like in '85, and things really got bad here, things changed. And when they changed, government was seriously affected with the almighty tax dollar, and especially the county. The county was going through tremendous fiscal woes. At the same time, what was happening was the town of Smithtown in particular, no different than any other town, was going through this change. We had developed most of the residential land in Smithtown. It was occupied. Our downtown areas were booming. And as such, when our grandfathers came up with the design of having a county police department, the one thing that they didn't concentrate on was the fact that having a bigger police department, having a police department that's more geographically spread out, doesn't necessarily address the issues of the local entity. So a void was created. Resources on the county were getting tougher and tougher. Police resources were being held back. Positions weren't being filled. And what was going on were quality of life issues in the town of Smithtown. Parks were not under control, zoning issues, urban sprawl, the whole bit. It was all occurring. And the town quickly recognized that they needed to change their business model on how they address these quality of life issues. And they had several failed attempts during a 2-year span. And myself, I kept telling the harbor master and anybody else that I had communication with, you know, they could come up with like a public safety concept here. And in doing so, you could house all your law enforcement authority, all the authorities that you need to combat these areas that have issues and fill that void between what the town does and what the county police department does. So there came a time where they were conducting interviews after several of these failed attempts. Particularly, they were having an issue in the parks and beaches at the time. There was a lot of rowdyism. Families couldn't enjoy them anymore. There was heavy drinking, just a multitude of not necessarily heavy criminal activity, but most definitely activity that was unbecoming to a family atmosphere. So I went for an interview. And I sat with the town board at the time, and Supervisor Vecchio was at that town board meeting. And they asked me a lot of questions. And I could see, you know, probably the biggest concern they had was, this fella's a kid. I was 29 years old. He's got a lot of ideas, but he's a kid. He spent his whole life, worked for the town, worked in law enforcement, but he's a kid.
Well, my first impressions was that there were many candidates, by the way. And you should know that the town had a really a ragamuffin kind of security for our parks. Guards, they had guards. Some were called guards, some were called something else. It wasn't very efficient. We had many problems with it, and there was much vandalism. And when we decided to go into code enforcement, we did interviews of many candidates who were on the list, the civil service list. John was outstanding. He was energetic. You could sense the energy. You could sense his wanting to do a good job.
So I left the interview with little to no confidence that I would obtain the job. And a week went by, and on a Monday morning, I was asked to see the town supervisor, and I went to visit with him, and he wanted me to start immediately in the position at that time of the Director of Code Enforcement. And at that time, that position, the concentration was to clean up the parks and the beaches and get under control these quality of life issues. To be quite honest with you, from the day that I took the job, I never liked that term, code enforcement. I thought it was a negative connotation, and I made my mind up that we were going to get rid of that name sooner than later. It didn't represent what my goals were, and it certainly didn't represent the police disciplines and the way that I wanted to interact with the public. And at that time, all the code enforcement department was a summons issuing agency. They took no time or care, or concern for that matter, to correct a situation or to gain compliance. The easiest thing and the simplest thing in their mind was to just write a summons. And I said, that's going to stop. So when I took over the department, I was 29 years old. I was immediately confronted by long-standing retired police officers with many years' experience. Not only many years of experience, but opinions based on whatever experiences they had in their career. And it was a very difficult situation for me and for the officers at that time, because I needed to change the image of the department and I needed to change the mission. Once again, the age factor didn't help. Everybody referred to me as the kid, but that quickly changed. They realized that I was here for the long run. I had a mission. I was going to prove myself to the town board and to the residents and develop a department that would clear up these quality of life issues, but also bring peace and good order back to the town facilities and parks and beaches. And the key to that whole program was working closely with the county police department, something that had never been done before. I made it my business to work with the commanding officer of the 4th Precinct, and in doing so, developed a tremendous relationship with him. His name was Inspector Richard Allen, another mentor in my life. It was funny because at that time, we were creating community policing before anybody even knew what the term was. Community policing means direct contact with the residents, directly interacting with the residents, and understanding what the residents' needs are and their concerns. A lot of times in law enforcement, we forget. We think about what our concerns are or what we perceive to be problems. That's not necessarily a good mind thought in the law enforcement business or the public safety business. You have to understand the people you serve. And you have to understand and develop a relationship and make inroads into the various communities within, in this case, the town of Smithtown, 55 square miles. And we, the town, combined our forces with the 4th Precinct, and we went out and addressed specific needs and specific problems. And we did them with no wall between us. They need us, we need them. And that was basically how we established the foundation for what now is known as the Department of Public Safety. So when I came in, I told the town board, we need to take the people that do the zoning, the people that do the ordinance investigations, we need to take them out of the building department. Let the building department handle everything up into the CO, the certificate of occupancy, and then afterwards, let us take that. Let us handle those issues. Those become the quality of life issues. We said, the security component doesn't work. At that time, there was no licensing for security people. There were no qualifications, minimum qualifications. It didn't work. The town had a very splintered, unprofessional security force. And I said, this is what I propose. I propose that we go to civil service and we come up with and develop a title that is a civil service tested with minimum qualifications title for a law enforcement position that patrols our town parks, beaches, facilities. And that title became the Park Ranger. So once again, we took the investigative, inspectional groups out of the building department. We took them out of the town attorney's office. We combined them under one unit, our ordinance investigation division. We eliminated the security forces and created a park ranger unit to patrol our parks, beaches, and town facilities. And then, over time, removed the waterways group out of the Parks Department, combined that into the Public Safety Department. And by a set of circumstances that evolved, while we were organizing this and developing the department, we also had to deal with the day-to-day issues that came about. And one of the issues at that time was we had a fire prevention division that was separate from anything else. There were allegations of wrongdoing within that unit, and we conducted an investigation with the district attorney's office, and subsequent to that, there were indictments, convictions regarding how that unit acted and conducted itself. That being said, I went to the town board and said, you know, that unit really should be under the auspices of the Public Safety Department. And that too was combined into the Public Safety Department. During that time frame, emergency management as we know it today was an unknown. It wasn't a discipline that any township conducted in a great degree, but we needed to coordinate the police department, the fire service, and the town entities in times of crisis, join those forces together. And at that time, what had happened on Main Street was Penn Furniture, which was a large entity at the time, was doing construction work without permits. And during that process, they had hit a gas line. And unbeknownst to the workers, the building filled up with gas. And there was an ignition source, and there was fatalities and injuries and a massive explosion that rocked the west end of Main Street. At that time, this emergency management thing, which was something that the fire service wanted, the town wanted, the county police wanted, but nobody really knew how to do it. And that gave me an opportunity to demonstrate and to lead all the great people within these entities. And we took a very bad situation on a Saturday morning, and by midnight that night, had gotten that whole situation under control. And not only under control, but managed a tremendous amount of resources, all coming through me, from me, through my contacts, through the people that I had worked through in the past, and funneled into one central command structure. Today, all that's taken for granted. It took many, many years for the federal government, in fact, to demand that local entities do that. And we started that in 1987. And fortunately for me at the time, we had young, aggressive, talented fire chiefs. We had Inspector Allen in the 4th Precinct. I had a supportive town board that recognized the need for this, and we created the Emergency Management Division of the Department of Public Safety. And along with that came our Communications Center. This is how it started. And as it developed, we became more skillful and more connected to the community and reworked that business model of that heavy enforcement hand, and instead became a community-based entity that the public could feel comfortable to go to and ask for help, or go to with a problem and see if it could be resolved. One thing I remember about the Penn Furniture explosion was that Chief of the Kings Park Fire Department, Robert Carroll, came to that scene, and on the hood of one of the fire chief's cars, he placed this rather large black box. And he said to me, "That's a cellular phone." And I said, "What is a cellular phone?" And he snapped out this big antenna and sent it up in the air. And he said, "You can use that like a phone." And I said, I can? He says, yeah, we bought it at Radio Shack. And I think it'll work here. And don't you know, it did work there. And that was the first time I ever saw or worked with cellular communication. And the thing weighed every bit of 25 pounds. But it worked. And we enhanced our town communications, and we created what is now today known as interoperability, which was unheard of back then. Oh no, the police department can't talk on the fire department frequencies, and the fire department can't talk on the police, and the town can't talk to, wait a minute, why can't we? Because somebody said we can't? No, we're gonna start to do that. So we created things like a common town-wide communication frequency or link, where at any given time during big events, we came together, we had the interoperability based on these common frequencies to interact. We became the support agency for all these entities in a time of need. It evolved into things like hurricanes. When we had hurricanes years ago, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. Today, we do that with finite detail. And today, we do it with computers also. I remember the first computer that we received it on a state grant. And it was under a program called Cameo, Computer Aided Management of Emergency Operations. Another 50-pound unit, big screen. In fact, if you look at this front page article in Newsday, you'll see that's me and our Chief Fire Marshal, Richard McKay, demonstrating Cameo. And when we got that, that created a database that allowed us to more easily manage police service, town services. And I have to point out, when I say town services, I'm not just talking about the Department of Public Safety. The Department of Public Safety becomes the lead agency in times of emergency for the town resources. But there are a tremendous amount of town resources. And now with Cameo, we could put forth a program that others in these entities could read and understand. Moving forward, computers became a big part of what we do. But as far as computers go, in managing operations, in coordinating resources, in integration of E911 systems, it's been a huge asset. It saves a tremendous amount of time, effort, and coordination. And the same with cellular communications. Cellular communications from an E911 standpoint is probably the biggest public safety positive that we've seen in 30 years. It saves lives.
The town of Smithtown's Emergency Management Office was put to the test when Superstorm Sandy hit on the evening of October 29, 2012. This was one of the most powerful storms to hit Long Island in the last 100 years. The Department of Public Safety began coordinating the cleanup recovery efforts immediately after the storm passed, with the various town departments, other governments, and the utility crews to coordinate the cleanup efforts. The Department of Public Safety serves as the Emergency Management Office and is actively involved in all phases of preparedness for natural and man-made emergencies and disasters.
When we started to see more frequent weather activities, we started to hone our skills and work more intimately with all the disciplines involved with who needs to address those situations. The EMS functions, the fire, the police functions, the recovery functions. We have a tendency in the public safety world after the event to kind of settle in. We don't do that anymore. We have post-recovery meetings, and we go into what we call our recovery mode. So there's still a tremendous amount of emergency management work to clean up, to get the roads back in service. To get people's electricity restored. People judge an emergency event in Suffolk County by electrical service, it's not always about electrical service. And personally, I have always championed the management skills of Lilco. But we had some rough roads. Now we're into PSE&G. I made it my business to work with those people and work directly with them. You know, politics sometimes plays a big role in our day-to-day lives. We all know that. But politics can't play a role in emergency events. And I have always stuck to that. I do not want to put my town supervisor or my town board in a position where they have to make emergency management decisions. That's what we do here. And I'm blessed with a board that is supportive of that. So I am given the authority and I am given the ability to move amongst these other disciplines and help assist them deliver the services they need. When that ambulance has to get to the end of Croft Lane, I'm the guy that's got to get that road open. And I'm the guy that's going to be on the phone talking to our highway superintendent or his dispatch and saying, this is what we need. That did not exist years ago. Those are the type of things that we do here. Those are the behind-the-scene things that we do to support the entities that are our frontline resources. One of the key supporters that this department has had since its infancy is that of the town supervisor, Supervisor Vecchio. His background in law enforcement and what he's done in the past in his career is second to none. He's seen as a figure that at times is unapproachable. However, I never felt that way with him. I could always approach him and I could always give him ideas and define missions that at first glance he might not have been too enthusiastic of, but always saw the benefit and the need for the residents of Smithtown.
36 years ago, I stood on...
Not only is he my superior, not only is he the town supervisor, but he's a true leader. And he understands and grasps the needs of the public. And in doing so, his leadership has always been a shining example for me in my career. And I'm grateful for that.
I don't recollect if I spoke. I doubt very much that I did. Because after all, I did not know what I had just been elected to do.
The department is made up of separate divisions, all reporting under one command structure. And the people that we have within those divisions of the Department of Public Safety are huge assets. And they come to the table with a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience. And I'm fortunate enough to have them because when I interact with them, they deliver for the people of the town of Smithtown. And they do a great job doing it. I love this community. I grew up in it. It certainly is not the same community that it was when I grew up, but it's still the community that I love. And it's been an honor to serve the residents of the town of Smithtown.
John Valentine, I would credit him with beginning public safety, building it from the ground up, and it is a model for other municipalities as we move forward. He's grown that department by leaps and bounds and done it in a very professional and economical way. He is a consummate leader. Everything about his department and the duties he carries out for the town, he takes extremely seriously.
John is very articulate. He's driven by making sure it's successful. He's driven by dedication to the town of Smithtown. He wants everything done right and above and beyond the call of duty.
He's a thorough professional. He has a stick-to-itiveness about him when it comes to a project that needs to be done. He's instituted many grants that have saved taxpayers money, and he's dogged on it and doesn't let go. If John were to go, he would be sorely missed.
Well, I guess so. I love what I do, and I love the people of Smithtown, and I'm honored to serve them.